On this Thursday night, tracking the Hantavirus. The effort's underway to find passengers who got off this cruise ship before the virus was detected.
The incubation period needs to go through its entire timeline.
The Canadians who are back home and what doctors are saying about this particular strain. One province's new public health emergency.
This emergency, it's not about creating fear.
What's driving a dramatic spike in HIV infections? Class action settlement, how much money some Canadians might get after a data breach at the CRA. Plus, capturing haunting images from Gaza.
These people deserve to live.
The Palestinian journalist who has just won a Pulitzer Prize and what he says keeps him going.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Efforts are underway in at least 12 countries to trace passengers who disembarked from a cruise ship before cases of hantavirus were confirmed on board. Ocean-wide Expeditions says at least 29 passengers, including 2 Canadians, got off the MV Hondius 2 weeks ago. Those 2 Canadians and a third who was on their flight home are now isolating at home in Ontario and Quebec. None are reported to have symptoms. And the UN Health Agency is reassuring the world that most people will never be exposed to hantavirus.
But I want to be unequivocal here. This is not SARS-CoV-2. This is not the start of a COVID pandemic. This is an outbreak that we see on a ship.
We will have more on this particular strain of hantavirus in just a moment, but we begin with Heidi Petracek on what happens next with those still on board the ship.
The more than 140 people still on board the MV Hondius just want to get home. Thankfully, everyone is doing well and we are healthy, says this Turkish passenger. 3 passengers died after contracting a rare strain of hantavirus known to transmit person to person, and at least 5 people connected to the vessel or its passengers are hospitalized in 3 countries. Health officials in 12 nations, including Canada, have also been told more than 24 passengers disembarked mid-voyage and went home before the outbreak was detected.
Public Health Agency Canada is following up on the 2 Canadians who have disembarked at St. Helena.
In a statement, the federal ministers in charge confirmed 2 passengers from Ontario returned home by air, traveling with a person from Quebec. All have been advised to self-isolate. None are showing symptoms.
The incubation and monitoring period will likely be in the 30-day period, but I want to reassure you that that is ongoing.
Self-isolation for those individuals that came in high-risk contact with individuals that were infected is probably very important. The incubation period needs to go through its entire timeline.
As for the 4 Canadians still on the vessel heading to the Canary Islands for repatriation, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand would only say
consular support will be in place when the ship reaches port.
She didn't take questions to clarify when and how those Canadians will return.
This is not COVID. This is not influenza. It spreads very, very differently.
As the WHO tries to alleviate fears, emphasizing the Andes strain is much different than COVID-19, authorities say those still on the ship are symptom-free so far, anxious to get home, healthy. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Hantavirus is not new. There are about 40 strains of it around the world. The one here in Canada can cause serious illness, but fewer than 10 people a year contract it. The type identified on that cruise ship is called the Andes strain, and it is the only one that is known to be capable of transmitting from human to human. And as Mike Armstrong reports, cases of that are rare too.
It may have all started with one of these. The long-tailed pygmy rice rat is the primary carrier of the Andes strain of the hantavirus.
The first 2 cases had traveled through Argentina.
The World Health Organization Thursday confirmed 2 of the cruise ship passengers that contracted the illness had, before embarking, taken part in a birdwatching tour. One excursion was at a landfill site in Argentina, a place where they could have been in contact with rats carrying the Andes strain. Now, hantavirus is still rare in Argentina, but it has had a surge in recent months. The health ministry says they've had 101 cases since June of last year, about double what they had the year before. In about a third of cases, the patient died. This molecular biologist says the strain is more lethal than many others, but it's also the only one that can form clusters of cases. Of the dozens of different hantavirus strains, the Andes is unique. It's the only one that can be passed from person to person. This infectious disease expert says someone infected by a rodent, once they're sick, can then spread it to other people. It's still rare. In Argentina, less than 6% of cases are human to human. It doesn't spread through casual contact. It tends to take droplets from coughing or sneezing or intimate contact. Now, part of what makes the virus so serious is how simple it seems at first and how quickly the situation deteriorates after that. This couple lost their 14-year-old son to the virus in January. The boy's mother says doctors thought it was the flu and sent him home with ibuprofen and told him to rest, but he went downhill suddenly. He died just 2 hours after the hantavirus test came back positive. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
The province of Manitoba has declared a public health emergency because of rising rates of HIV. Manitoba had the highest rate of HIV in 2024. The national average was about 5.5 cases for every 100,000 people. In Manitoba, it's more than 3.5 times higher. Saskatchewan is the only other province nearing that rate at 18.6. Katherine Dornian looks at why cases are on the rise and what difference a public health emergency makes.
It's been classified as a pandemic since the 80s, but globally, HIV rates have been significantly declining for decades. But in Manitoba, over the past 6 years, that trend has been reversing, prompting the provincial government to declare a public health emergency.
This is significant, it's concerning, and it requires a coordinated action across governments, communities, and health systems.
The province says they saw 328 cases in 2025, up from 90 in 2019. Manitoba has the highest new diagnosis rate of any province at 19.5 cases per 100,000 people in 2024. Dr. Brent Rusin says around 70% of transmission is driven by drug injection, and another major factor is unprotected heterosexual sex. He says they'll be responding by working with community groups to help raise awareness and ramp up testing.
Either point-of-care testing, using different formats for that, even self-testing. So with this, we want to have a real organized approach to be able to expand that, to put those resources where people need them.
More than 50% of the new cases are among women, compared to the national average of 32%. The province adding First Nations people are being disproportionately affected. Kiwetanuk Inanao Minoweawan, which works to strengthen health services in northern Manitoba, says they have very few resources in rural and remote areas.
There is a lack of awareness. There's still quite a bit of stigmatization. There is very little testing that's actually being done within the nations.
Marion Willis, who does homelessness and addictions-related outreach, says HIV diagnoses used to be unusual, but that's no longer the case. She says the increase is tied to more people falling into addiction, homelessness, and other socioeconomic struggles that worsened during the pandemic.
I've watched the AIDS epidemic grow from its very beginnings to that place where now we have treatment for it. And then I never thought in my lifetime, at this point in my life, in this decade, I would be watching people die from HIV, AIDS, full-blown AIDS. I've seen that now, sadly.
With modern treatments, there are very few HIV-related deaths each year, and the province is hoping to curb the trend so it stays that way. Katherine Dornian, Global News, Winnipeg.
BC's Premier says the secondary school in Tumbler Ridge, where 6 people were killed in one of Canada's worst mass shootings, will be torn down. A new school will be built on a new site. The Premier says the decision was led by people in the community. There is some relief tonight for tens of thousands of Canadians whose sensitive information was stolen by hackers on the CRA website. The federal government will pay nearly $9 million to settle a class action lawsuit. Cyber criminals breached accounts at the Canada Revenue Agency using stolen identities to apply for the emergency relief benefit that was available during the pandemic. Touria Izri reports.
During the pandemic, millions of Canadians relied on CERB. People who signed up received this message, but tens of thousands who never applied got it too.
CRA website lacked robust security controls.
The federal government has been ordered to pay $8.7 million to settle a class action lawsuit for security gaps that were underlined again Thursday in a new report by the Privacy Commissioner.
We found that there was, since 2020, 42,000 privacy breaches involving the unauthorized use of taxpayer information by third parties. So cases of fraud, people pretending to be someone they were not.
Hackers repeatedly targeted Canada Revenue Agency accounts in 2020, using stolen information to impersonate victims.
My account had been hacked and that they had applied for CERB and changed my direct deposit information.
47,000 Canadians were affected, including a British Columbia man named Todd Sweet, who was the lead plaintiff, arguing he and others were vulnerable to hackers because of operational failures at the CRA.
You would think that they would have made efforts to be more responsive to taxpayers adversely affected.
The CRA has since made changes to boost security, including stronger multi-factor authentication. Canadians who lost money can apply for up to $5,000 in compensation to cover out-of-pocket expenses, and $80 to $200 for the breach itself. Amounts this cybersecurity expert calls paltry.
This is, many days late and quite a few dimes short.
The federal justice described the settlement as fair, reasonable, and in the best interests of everyone involved. Donna?
Touria Izri, thanks. Former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is speaking out after threatening legal action related to that data leak of the voters list in Alberta. His personal information was accessed by a separatist group called the Centurion Project, who did not have legal access to the list. The RCMP is investigating, and Kenney believes it's the same group of anti-vaxxers who harassed him during the pandemic.
These are people for whom the end can justify the means, which is why I think they keep getting caught breaking the law. And I think there just need to be consequences for this kind of action. And that's why I'm looking at my civil remedies as well as alongside whatever's happening with the RCMP.
Elections Alberta says it's issued cease and desist letters to more than 500 people who are believed to have accessed the database that posted the province's voters list containing the names and addresses of almost 3 million people. The Centurion Project said they gave the list to 23 people, and they've been given a deadline to sign a declaration agreeing to comply with the cease and desist order or face legal consequences. Alberta's premier is expected to have another meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney on Friday. They've got lots to talk about, given the rise of the separatist movement in Alberta and the framework both leaders agreed to last year to build a new pipeline to the BC coast. But one of the deadlines in that framework has already come and gone. And as Heather Yurix West reports, it appears there's been no progress.
A standing ovation from energy heavyweights last fall has turned to nervous unrest.
With this delay, it's causing some anxiety. Like, is this actually going to happen? There's so much uncertainty around it.
The Memorandum of Understanding between Alberta and Ottawa last November came with an April 1st deadline for deals to be reached on key climate policies for the energy sector, including industrial carbon pricing and a three-way agreement with oil sands producers on major carbon capture and storage infrastructure. But 5 weeks past the deadline, no agreement has been reached.
We need to start seeing some signals, right? Like real signals from the government that we are going to be an energy superpower.
The CEO of the Canadian oil sands company Cenovus told analysts on a quarterly update call Wednesday, federal regulations in their current form have driven investors away.
For example, the industrial carbon tax is unique to Canada. No other major oil-producing nation in the world has one. The result is this tax does not incent decarbonization of the Canadian industry, but instead incents industry to invest outside of Canada.
I think if Ottawa and our government here knew there was a war coming, they might have framed the MOU a different way.
It's why this energy industry expert believes it could make sense for the federal government to deprioritize climate issues for now.
This war is going to end at some point, and governments will continue to look at climate, among other issues like energy security and affordability, and decide, how they intend to meet their climate commitments.
Both levels of government have said negotiations are progressing. though industry will need more than assurances to restore confidence to the levels seen last fall. Heather Yurex, West Global News, Calgary.
More flights being cut because of the jet fuel shortage. Coming up, which routes Air Canada is suspending. It was supposed to be a victory party after a big win for Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League semi-final, but it was marred by violence. Some fans clashed with police who fired tear gas. 127 people were arrested, 34 were injured, including 23 police officers. Similar riots happened in Paris last year when PSG won the Champions League. Air Canada has announced it is suspending service on 4 seasonal flights to the United States earlier than planned because of the soaring cost of jet fuel. The routes are Vancouver to Raleigh, Toronto to Sacramento, Toronto to Charleston, and Montreal to Austin. The airline says it plans to resume those routes next summer. Affected customers will be offered alternative travel options or a refund. The U.S. military says it has conducted new airstrikes on Iran, retaliation it claims for Iran launching missiles and drones at U.S. ships in the Strait of Hormuz. President Donald Trump said tonight the ceasefire does remain in effect. Iran accuses the U.S. of violating it. Earlier, Iran had said it was reviewing an American peace proposal. A one-page memorandum of understanding floated by the Trump administration would set the stage for peace talks, extending the ceasefire for 30 days. Legal and financial woes for the Métis National Council. Ahead, why a judge has ordered the group to pay $12 million. The Métis National Council is facing financial collapse after an Ontario judge ordered the group to pay nearly $12 million. It's the result of a lawsuit filed against former leaders, staff, and consultants. The council alleged those people misused money, though a judge found no evidence supporting that. Now, one of the defendants, Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand, is calling on Ottawa to defund the organization. Melissa Ridgen is following this for us. Melissa, could this be the end of the Métis National Council?
Donna, critics would argue it's been a self-inflicted rough few years, beginning with an identity crisis over who is or isn't Métis, well before this lawsuit that went nowhere. One of the defendants says this should be the final straw for Ottawa to stop financing the Métis National Council.
It's about $20 million, estimated $20 million cost that MNC incurred and pushed down the road for vengeance and vindictiveness. At the end of the day, the lawyers are the winners. But at the end of the day, the people are the losers. Our Métis citizens are the ones that lose.
David Chartrand was the MNC's finance minister for nearly 2 decades until 2021. He and multiple former staff and consultants were named in a 2022 lawsuit led by then-President Cassidy Caron, who, along with the Métis Nations of Ontario and Alberta, alleged serious misuse of MNC money. But a judge threw out the case in November, saying they acted honestly and devoted their lives to the Métis Nation. She ordered the MNC to cover everyone's legal costs.
It doesn't have legitimacy. I think the question will be to Canada, how can they continue to fund an entity, an organization that's not legitimate?
The MNC gets around $20 million a year from Ottawa, but most provincial Métis governments, Manitoba, BC, and Saskatchewan, left the organization over identity and citizenship disputes, a question Liberal cabinet members dodged Thursday.
Is it time to defund the Métis National Council? What was the point of... Minister Chartrand, is it time to defund the Métis National Council? A lot of people say it's a disaster. Is it time to defund that group?
No comment. Indigenous Services Canada says they're keeping an eye on the matter and refraining from decisions that would be premature or unduly reactionary. The MNC didn't respond to interview requests, but they are appealing the judgment. And Donna, it doesn't look like they feel their days are numbered. They've asked Ottawa for $6.7 billion over the next 10 years.
All right, Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg, thanks. Next, a stunning look at the reality of life in Gaza through the lens of an award-winning Palestinian photographer. What's happening in Gaza isn't making headlines anymore, though the future remains deeply uncertain for people who live there. The ceasefire is still in place, but the health ministry in Gaza says more than 800 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli strikes since it was declared. Israel still does not allow foreign journalists into Gaza. Local journalists risked their lives to get images out, and more than 200 have been killed. One man who is still working just won the prestigious Pulitzer Prize. Redmond Shannon has his story.
You may not recognize Sahar Al-Ghora, but it's quite likely you have seen his photos, documenting the trauma, the destruction, and the suffering in Gaza. Among the set of images that won him a Pulitzer Prize this week is that of toddler Yazan Abu Al-Ful, photographed during last year's food shortages caused by Israel restricting aid deliveries.
We were exhausted and starving ourselves that day. While taking the picture, we felt that we were experiencing a part of the same suffering he was going through.
Al-Ghora's photos include Hamas militants returning what was believed to be an Israeli hostage's body and the aftermath of airstrikes, but he says his eyes are more often drawn to light and life.
I look for children playing among the tents, or for any moment that gives a sense of life and hope, because these people deserve to live.
Al-Ghora says he wants to show how life continues no matter what, like this family breaking their Ramadan fast. Despite his Pulitzer and other international awards, Al-Ghora, like others in Gaza, cannot leave. Not that he wants to.
Given the ban on international journalists entering Gaza, I feel it's our duty to continue no matter the challenges.
More than 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza since Hamas attacked Israel in 2023.
All I want is stability, and for there to be a future for the people, the children, and the generation we see slipping away before our eyes.
Al-Ghora says the world should not forget the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. He will keep going so that we don't. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Such powerful pictures. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Fleur-de-Lis, Newfoundland and Labrador. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Jeff Semple will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.